Welcome to the Business Blueprint, where entrepreneurs and business leaders learn how to work smarter, scale faster, and build better.
Good morning and welcome to episode 8 of the Business Blueprint. I'm your host, Joe Sandin. Today we're going to talk about hiring young talent and building the next generation of leaders. So about 26 years ago when I started my business, I guess I was the young talent. I was 19, 20 years old. And so I was obviously in tune with, what young people were looking for, in business and in a career. But as I've grown and got older, and now I'm in my 40s, it gets a little bit tougher. I'm not the young generation anymore. And I don't always, understand what that generation is looking for in a career. So I thought it would be a fun episode to just kind of talk about, because businesses are really, challenged with finding good young talent and finding that next generation of leaders. And so it's really important in your business to be in tune with what the young generation's looking for in a career and just be able to put yourself in a position where you can attract that young talent. So with me today are two of our newer team members at Onsharp, Kendra and Brooklyn. And we're going to hear directly from them what the next generation is looking for as they enter the workforce. So to kick it off, why don't you both take a stab at telling everyone a little bit about yourself, what you do at Onsharp, and what your path looked like getting here. Kendra, let's start with you first.
Okay, well, my name is Kendra. Like Joe said, I am a business development representative here at Onsharp. And how I joined the team with Onsharp is a pretty funny story. I was working part-time as a server, and I had connected with Joe and his wife, and it kind of took off from there. Started my internship at the end of May, and I joined the team full-time in January.
Yeah, very funny story how we met. And it's funny, I think, as you run a business over the years, you learn to understand good people when you see them, no matter where that is. And I just, Tony and I were very struck with just your personality and how good your attention to detail was. And we, so Kendra's like working with us, and she has this bubbly kind of like fun personality, and we were both like, gosh, we should ask her, what's her major, what's she doing, and all this stuff. And lo and behold, we got her over at Onsharp, and it's been really great. So I think it's funny in life how sometimes you run into the next great talent when you're not necessarily looking.
Right, yeah.
Okay, Brooklyn, how about you?
Yes, thanks for having us on today, Joe. So my name is Brooklyn, and I'm currently a digital marketing specialist at Onsharp. And my path here began about a year ago. I actually met Jake Dahl, the VP of Sales and Marketing at the NDSU Marketing and Sales Hiring Fair. And I just went up to the Onsharp booth and was really curious about learning more about what they did. And part of our project was to do a follow-up afterwards and kind of connect with somebody on LinkedIn. And Jake had caught my attention, and so I messaged him, and he's like, yeah, you really caught my attention as well, and I think that you would be very fitting for a role that's not advertised on our website yet, but I'd love to have you come into the office and meet with Joe Sandin, our CEO and president. And so I did that a few days later, and then from there I started working with Joe on different smaller projects, more on his personal branding stuff, and then as time went on, I got to work on larger, bigger initiatives for the company. So yeah, it's been really fun to learn and grow, and excited for all that's to come at Onsharp. So.
Yeah, no, it was very memorable for me too. I remember when Jay came back from the career fair, he's like, oh, I met this girl. You've got to talk to her. Like, I think she could be a great marketing fit. And so I remember Brooklyn came in, we sat in the conference room, and we just had a conversation. And again, just great personality, very confident. I could tell you had a good head on your shoulders. I know your dad and your parents are entrepreneurs, and so that obviously is helpful. But I think I pretty much told you, like, I'll hire you, like right in the room. And,
yeah.
I'm not one to waste time. I think if you find the right person and you think the fit's there, make it happen, right? So both of you were very memorable for me as far as like how we connected and how things came about. So that's really cool. So why did you decide to join Onsharp specifically? Kendra, let's start with you.
I think I decided to join Onsharp specifically when I started with the internship, and the amount of time that I got coaching from Jake was really helpful. It was my first sales position, so I was going into it with a very open mind, kind of just wanted to absorb everything that I could get from him and from leadership. So when I was offered the full-time position, the way that I got it and how it fell at my lap as well, kind of just, it was a no-brainer for me to move forward.
Well, and for you, that wasn't your major either.
Right.
Why don't you talk a little about
your
major compared to what you're doing now?
I have my bachelor's. I graduated in December. I have my bachelor's in social work from Minnesota State University. So it is a big flip. So having a leadership that's willing to take on a chance for somebody who this isn't in their field of study and they are willing to commit and learn and be coachable, having that opportunity was very lucky for me.
And I remember talking to you about, what do you want to do in your career and what excites you, what doesn't? Because I was really big on I don't want to talk you into something that you're not right for. And so as we had those conversations, I could just see the energy in you and that you were just really hungry to, you were pretty open to different opportunities. And I told Jake, I'm like, I think we should give her a shot and see how she does. And so I know during your internship, you did a really great job in that role and just showed a ton of potential. And so it just worked out great for you to come on in January. So Brooklyn, how about you? What brought you on to Onsharp specifically?
Yeah, so kind of going back to the marketing and sales hiring fair and just meeting Jake and then coming in and meeting Joe was great to kind of like you had mentioned with growing up in a family that's full of entrepreneurs. I think that just connecting with you on that level was really great to have some of that resonate with me and just being able to learn more from your perspective. And then I've always been interested in websites and marketing and have done a lot of stuff just on my own and freelancing and stuff like that. So I think just getting to learn and grow in that area and knowing that you guys are embracing change and willing to use different technologies and continue learning, I think was one of the biggest things for me.
Yeah, I would argue you've gone through a ton of change and, working directly with me, every day is different. I know I've thrown a ton of stuff at you. And I think that just goes back to my entrepreneurial roots when you start a business. You just have to do everything, right? So you've been very good at just rolling with the punches and just staying positive and learning and understanding. I think when you're young and your guys' age, you need to try a lot of stuff, even if you're not sure it's the right thing for you, to kind of hone in on what you think you want to specialize in. So I've really appreciated your willingness to just kind of roll with it, and you don't get uptight about anything. You're positive. You just do it, and you're constantly trying to learn, and that's great. So obviously you both had expectations coming in, but whether or not that was the reality, I'm kind of curious, what did you have for expectations? And then how did that actually align with reality once you started working full time?
I think for me, starting with the internship was such a great opportunity for me because it was so comparable to the full-time role. I really got to jump into it, take on the responsibility that a full-time employee would have, and prove that I can be successful and this is the right fit for me. So transitioning to a full-time role, I went into it with so much more confidence.
Sure. Yeah, because you get to actually see if it's something that's going to be a good fit. How about you, Brooklyn?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things was when I started with you working on more of your smaller personal things, being able to have that kind of translate into where you could see my potential in the larger initiatives for the company, I think was probably one of the biggest things for seeing expectations and having that actually compare to the reality in my full-time role, having those same things that I was working on prior to, but actually having that big impact for the company later on.
Yeah, and I think you guys make a really good point. I remember when I was 18, 19, 20, and I did a couple internships. Those were so huge for me, and a lot of my friends were not doing internships. They were going home, and they were kind of just not taking their summer very seriously, and I think that's a big mistake. So I think if I had some advice for the younger generation, you have to try to get real-world experience as fast as you can, because you want to be able to come in and be productive and spend some of that time. If you can figure out if what you're majoring in is really right for you early, then you have time to make an adjustment. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, kind of just pick majors and they don't necessarily know if it's the right thing, and then they end up switching later, and then that's a costly thing to do. So I think it was smart that you were both very focused on internship opportunities.
Yeah, I also just really appreciated being able to jump into it and figure out if you like it or not. There's no other way to figure out if you like something or if you can see yourself being successful at something than to jump in headfirst and to do it.
Absolutely. All right, well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to zoom out a little bit, and I want to talk about what young professionals are actually looking for in a career today. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Business Blueprint. Really funny, on break, Kendra's dad popped in. I forgot he works at the station here. And you could just see how proud he was of you sitting in the chair. And he's like, I didn't even know you were going to be on the radio today. So that was fun. That was very funny. So we're talking about future leaders and how to build future leaders in our businesses. We have Kendra and Brooklyn from Onsharp. Both have interned with us and are now full-time. And we're going to transition to talking about there's a lot of talk about how hard it is to hire young talent today. And I don't think enough companies actually stop and really ask the question, what is the younger generation looking for? What do they want in a job? So I'm going to start off and ask you guys. So when you were job hunting, what mattered most to you when you were evaluating companies that you might want to work for?
Yeah, I can go first. I feel like one of the biggest things for me was knowing more about the company values and kind of what they stand for, their mission, just getting to learn more about how that affects their day-to-day operations, just different things within that realm. I think another thing too is having that good balance between flexibility and just having an encouraging atmosphere and an encouraging boss who's willing to work with you on different things and being able to experiment and not kind of having that micromanagement perspective, but just more of the feeling and sense that they trust you and they believe that you can do what you set your mind to. So I think those were the biggest things for me and kind of looking at Onsharp as a whole and when I was job hunting and really deciding that Onsharp was the right fit for me. So
Sure. How about you, Kendra?
Yeah, I think when I had first connected with you the way I did, it was a no-brainer to me that you're willing to embrace change, like you said, and kind of connect with people not in the more traditional route, which I assumed that would translate into how you run the business and being open-minded. And then meeting Jake and getting the opportunity to be coached by him was very helpful for me as well.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if this just was the way I've been forever because I started a business when I was young, but like I've always been one to, age doesn't really matter to me. I mean, obviously, when you're young, you don't have a ton of experience, but I look back like our leadership team. So Samantha, who's our integrator, Joe, who kind of runs the entire service delivery side, both started. Samantha was an accounting intern, and she was actually a music major, and now she's our integrator. She pretty much runs all the day-to-day. They've both been here 15 years again. And then Joe started, he was very early in his career. He started kind of as a temp worker doing a project and then very quickly just moved into more and more responsibility. And so, I mean, I think as a business, you got to look at your talent and not, I mean, I know it depends on the size of the company and how you operate and stuff, but like I've always been a big fan of giving people opportunity and as fast as they want to move, I'll put them in a position to be able to do that. So it's good to hear that that's important to you. And I hate micromanaging too. So like, I think you got to give people the autonomy to be creative and kind of do things, try some stuff and, fail. We're not all perfect and you just got to kind of go through that process. So what makes a company stand out, to someone your age when you're just looking at companies in general? Like what are some of the outside looking in components that you see?
I think as a student, I would say seeing the companies that are at the college events or engaging with students where they're going to be. I think you might look at a company and think that there's so many barriers to entry because you just don't know how they operate, who the best person to connect with is, how you get your foot in the door with these companies. So finding companies that do offer internships, they do engage with young professionals at these events or so on, I think is encouraging to students.
Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. I would 100% agree because that's how I found this position was through a NDSU-sponsored event, and knowing that Onsharp was there and showing up for students was great. And then just being able to sit down and talk with the leaders of the company. Both Kendra and I were able to connect with you, Joe, and then Jake as well. And I think that shows a lot, just being able to have the leader actually have conversations with the people that are just starting out. So
great. So Brooklyn, you mentioned how important culture was. So, kind of when you rank stuff, culture, flexibility, growth opportunity, how do you compare that to like the numbers and the salary and like, how do you weigh those things together to decide what matters most?
Yeah, I definitely feel that to me, having a flexible schedule and a supportive boss are way up there and outweigh the salary at the end of the day. I think that it's important to be in an environment where you can feel like you can make mistakes and you're not going to be punished for them, but just treat them as a learning experience and being able to grow from them. And I think I can definitely say that about Onsharp, that I'm able to try new things every single day and never feel like I am going to get punished for having a mistake or doing something wrong. I think that speaks volumes compared to just having that big check at the end of the day. So.
Sure. Kendra, how about you? How does salary compare to everything else?
I would agree. I think having a culture and a flexible schedule compared to salary. And I also don't think you have to pin them against each other. I think you can find companies where you do get both. You do get a great salary and you get a culture and an openness and feeling like you can connect with your boss and be encouraged. I don't think that those things have to be siloed.
No, and I think as a business owner, a lot of times the mistake we make is we don't determine what success looks like in everyone's role. So for example, when you were hired, like Kendra, for sure, you on the sales side, there's a very clear definition of what success looks like. You have, and we're very open about that. So like it can be really easy to comp people properly when you can tell whether they're performing or they're not performing, and then again, coaching and helping them get there and being an advocate for their growth. At the end of the day, everything costs money, whether it's, snacks in the break room or health insurance or salary. I mean, it all factors in. So it all just kind of goes into one bucket in my mind. And you gotta find the right mix of what's going to essentially provide the most value for the employee. Mm-hmm. Yep. So let's talk about red flags. So if you were looking at employers, what are some things that you would look at and be like, that's not the right place for me?
I think we kind of talked about this earlier, but the concept of micromanaging, I think it's really challenging for especially young professionals feeling like they don't have any autonomy, nowhere to grow because they have to be told what to do consistently. So
how do you manage? So like, I agree. How do you kind of walk that line between maybe lots of feedback, but not micromanagement? Like, what does that look like to you?
I think for me on the sales team, having a penciled in time with Jake, our VP of sales and marketing, to kind of go over what objections am I handling? How am I controlling these conversations and working with these clients, and having an opportunity where the expectation is to get constructive criticism compared to it being sprinkled out throughout my day.
Sure. Brooklyn, how about you? What are red flags you look for?
Yeah, I would say, honestly, pretty much very similar there. I think having a boss that's willing to coach you and being able to believe in you and mentor you, I think is very important. I think that just when you have questions, I mean, you obviously need to learn to be independent and work on your own, but when I can just go knock on the door down the office and ask you a question when I have something, or same with Kendra and Jake, I think it speaks volumes for that as well, just being able to know that that's the right place when you can have people that have your back. So
Sure. So let's help businesses out here that are listening. If you could tell them and have them change one thing about the way they recruit young talent, what would you tell them? What would you tell them they should do differently?
I would say maybe I was thinking about this question, and I think if you can give insight to the young talent, if you don't move forward in offering them a position where they can grow, so they do feel encouraged. I think it is very scary for young professionals applying to jobs and getting an email saying, we're not giving you the position and we're not going to tell you why or where you can improve. And also with internships, I did get a lot of coaching from Jake throughout my internship that gave me the confidence to accept a full-time position.
Sure. Brooklyn, how about you?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that just being able to believe in them and trust in them, I think, is something that they have to do when you're recruiting young talent. They haven't had as much experience as other people in the office, so I think that if there be one thing to change, I think it would just be to have leaders just really embrace that and being able to trust in the young talent right away.
Transparency. So business leaders that are listening, our young people want transparency. They want to understand what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, how they can get better. And even if they don't get the job, what could they have done better? I do agree. I think a lot of times we pick who we're going to pick and then we kind of move on, and we don't necessarily give a lot of feedback to our applicants and how they can improve. So that's great feedback. All right, so we're going to go to break again. When we come back, I'm going to talk about the next piece. Once a company hires great young talent, how do they actually develop them into strong contributors and future leaders? We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Business Blueprint. We are continuing our conversation with Brooklyn and Kendra. Both are newer hires on the Onsharp team, and we're talking about the next generation and what they're looking for and how businesses can help young talent thrive. So now we're going to move on and start talking a little bit about growth, development, and leadership. One thing at Onsharp that we've tried to do is give people, we give people responsibility early, and we're not afraid to challenge them. So Brooklyn and Kendra, do you want to be challenged early, or would you rather be eased into responsibility?
For me, I would much rather be challenged early, especially in my role. Just getting into it, I think, is the best way to start. And that's what was success for me, is getting into it as soon as I could.
So what does challenging me early look like in your job compared to easing me into it?
I think challenging me right away is getting me on the phones. You know, I was making calls as soon as I got the okay from Jake, and learning how to maneuver those conversations and also handle rejection, I think, is something that I really had to learn and settle into getting. Yeah. So for me, it was like, you have to start. Otherwise, you might push it, and then it.
Even at my age, handling rejection is not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
So how do you manage your way through that? I mean, are you just good at it naturally, or?
Yes, I'm just good at it naturally.
Okay.
No.
Because a lot of people would not like to get rejected, 98 out of 100 times.
And I did struggle with that right away, I will admit. And then I kind of was able to compartmentalize it. You know, they're not rejecting me. They're not looking at me and saying, no, Kendra, I don't like you, so I don't want to talk to you.
Right.
It's the time of day. It's the conversation that we are having, the way I started the conversation, you know, being able to look at it from a different lens other than they just rejected me.
Yeah, I remember when I was young and I worked in a shoe store, and I had to learn how to deal with rejection of people like not wanting to buy shoes. And then, you know, I had to go through that to learn, how do I get them over those objections? And how do I, you know, like, what do I need to say to kind of like help them understand the value and that kind of stuff? And that's the only way you grow, is to go through that rejection. If everything was easy, you know, once you had some hard times, you would have no idea what to do, right?
Right.
Yeah. So Brooklyn, how about you? Do you like being thrust into things, or would you rather do it a little more methodically?
Would say definitely being challenged early. I think being able to prove yourself at an early standpoint in the business is definitely better than dragging it out and kind of waiting to see if you have that potential. I think that one of the biggest things you can do early on is just say yes to new things and really embrace it and just keep going on learning as much as you can right away. I think that's one of the most valuable things, is to always be curious and ask questions and just continue to say yes.
I completely agree. I think one of the biggest things I look for when I work with anyone is their willingness to say yes and take things on. I don't like to put people in a really tight box. You know, I know everyone has a job role, but like sometimes we all got to pick up the slack and do things that we're not necessarily hired to do. And I think both of your willingness to just go blazing into whatever it is and just learn and adapt and do what you can. Again, for your sake, when you're young, to understand, is this something I want to do for 20, 30, 40 years? You know, because the only way I think you learn learn that you don't want to have a certain job is you work that job and you're like, oh, this is painful, or this is not, you know, this is not my strong suit. So it's been great that you guys have both, you know, had that mentality. So what does good leadership look like from your perspective? What are you looking for? You know, now that you're in these jobs, what kind of leadership are you looking for?
I think that one of the biggest things is just recognition in like your early effort and early wins. I think is probably one of the biggest things, to know that they're seeing that and they appreciate what you're doing, I think is really good. And then also just having that consistent approachability from the leadership team and being able to talk to them and ask them different things that you're struggling with, and kind of just learning how to grow from there, from the leadership team.
Okay, Kendra?
I think celebrating wins was huge for me, especially when I am getting rejected every day on the phone. You know,
Right.
Being able to have a win and have it be celebrated, especially early on, I think is really encouraging for young professionals. And it's a great way to build confidence. You know, if your employer is confident in you, you should be confident in you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think my piece of advice for leaders, you have to I think when you're working with young entrepreneurs and young, you know, talent in your company, I think you have to teach the activity and not necessarily the outcome. Like, they're not going to be able to control the outcome as well as they're going to be further down the road. So like, I think you have to teach good habits and work ethic, and then the successes will come from that. So like for you, Kendra, it was what we had to do is teach you how to handle rejection and how to navigate conversations. It wasn't about like, oh, you must hit, you know, you must get so many wins, you know, right out of the gate, or you're not doing something right. Like, you need to work your way into that. So I think it is important that you do celebrate the wins. You don't focus on, you know, maybe that they're not hitting certain numbers at first, because you have to teach the habits. Like if you're lifting weights, you're not going to become a bodybuilder in a week. Like, you need to put in the habits or put in the work and the reps, and then eventually that will come, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So how do you prefer to get the feedback in coaching? Like, is it verbal? Is it face-to-face? How often do you want to get feedback? Like, what is a good feedback rhythm kind of look like to you?
I think for me, definitely verbal feedback is better. I think when you get something via email or via Teams chat or something, I think it's a lot easier to understand the tone and where they're coming from when they can speak to you in person. And verbally, I think that one of the best things as well is to, before you get on them for things that they're doing wrong or struggling with, I think it's best to probably compliment them and focus on the areas that they're excelling. And then from there, you can tell them, these are the points you're struggling with. I'd love to see improvement in these areas, instead of just telling them everything they're doing wrong. I think giving some confidence booster in there about things that they're doing right is appreciated as well.
Yeah, and I think for me, being able to role play with Jake has been great for my learning, being able to practice handling these objections with him to his face, and then we talk through it and kind of sit in the mud about it and figure out what should have been said or what we're going to say next time to improve.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. He's your teammate.
Right, yeah.
You're not alone. I mean, you're getting feedback, but he's in there with you.
Yeah.
He's trying to figure it out with you.
Yeah, he's definitely a coach role for me. I see him as my coach.
Yep. And Brooklyn on the marketing side, you don't have maybe the same immediate feedback luxury that Kendra has. She can be on a call and get immediate feedback on how the call went. In the world of marketing, like, we don't get feedback very quickly sometimes. Like, we put stuff out there and we don't even know if it's necessarily working, other than what our gut instinct tells us. Or, I mean, there are metrics, but that can be challenging. Like, how do you deal with that?
Definitely. And yeah, marketing is definitely more of an opinion-based industry, where I could think something looks great and then somebody else could think that it looks terrible. So I think that just knowing to really get a broad scope and get opinions from a lot of different people is better than just narrowing it down to only a few. Yeah.
So what do you think holds young professionals back from growing faster in companies? What are things that would kind of stunt their growth?
I think one of the biggest things is leadership not being open to new ideas or listening to the young minds in the company. I think that we're just getting out of school and learning a lot of things, and yes, we might have some very stupid ideas as well, but I think just learning that we have value too, and we bring different ideas to the table. And I think that Onsharp is great at just allowing us to experiment with all kinds of new things and being able to really get your feet wet early and learn a lot from the get-go. So,
how about you, Kendra?
I totally agree with Brooklyn, and being able to, hold those conversations and hear out our young people's minds. I think if that doesn't happen, they could end up just siloing themselves and not holding those conversations with leadership, because in their mind, there's no point. And I think that that's a tough spot to be in for a company.
So is it more about being heard but not being right necessarily?
Yeah, for sure.
I think, because in a business, someone's got to ultimately make a decision on things. And so I do think when a person's young, they got to understand, okay, I'm gonna bring up a lot of ideas, but maybe I don't know everything, so we're not going to necessarily implement a lot of things but I think you at least want to have a voice, right? You want to feel heard.
Yeah, I feel like even if, to your point, if we're not going to take my idea and run with it, at least you know what it is.
Right.
And I can sleep better at night.
Right. Yep. So what as you continue working at Onsharp, and I hope you both stay forever, that would be so fun, right? But what kind of opportunities make you excited to stay and grow in your job? What are you looking for over the next 2, 3, 5 years?
I think that in my role especially, I feel that technology is, everybody's role really in the company. Technology is evolving so fast, and I think you're a great example of this, Joe, being able to really embrace that new technology and learn from it and experiment and try new things. Like I've mentioned before, just having that willingness to be able to try that and continue to grow and adapt with everything that's out there, I think is probably one of the biggest things for me in growing in my position.
Yeah, I also think, one of our core values is embrace change. And when we have that mindset every day, all ideas are open. We can have those conversations. There's room for that, because that is our core value, embracing change.
Yeah, and that's my favorite core value of ours, but I think it's the toughest one because change is very hard for a lot of people. And I love hearing that you enjoy that core value. A lot of us old timers have a hard time with change, and it's not easy. And it's not going to be easy. You know, what feels like the right thing to do today might not be the right thing in a month from now. And I think businesses in general, I do need to embrace change, as you know, AI is disrupting everything and the world just moves so much faster than it used to. So it's good to hear you say that you like that core value, because we are definitely not going to stop embracing change at Onsharp. All right, well, we're going to take our last break. When we come back, I want to wrap up with some practical advice, both for business owners trying to hire young talent and for young professionals that are just starting their careers. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Business Blueprint. We are in our final little segment here talking with Brooklyn and Kendra about what young talent's looking for in their career and how businesses can attract that talent and nurture them and really transition to the next phase of business. These next generations are going to be taking over companies faster than we can even think about it, and there's a lot of work to be done. So I want to bring everything together with some practical takeaways, both for the employers and for the next generation that's actually looking to move into the workforce. So a couple questions for you guys. So first of all, what is one mistake that you think companies are making that's causing young talent to leave?
I think one of the biggest mistakes is not listening to the young talent, or kind of just assuming that they're not ready to take on different responsibilities within the company. We kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier too, with listening to their ideas and stuff. And obviously not every idea has to be heard by any means, but just knowing that they trust us with different responsibilities throughout the company, and being able to step in and try that right away. So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. And I also think it's important to encourage them to continue going. Like, you're doing a great job in your role, and you do have these opportunities that can come your way to stick through and move with the company as they're embracing the change.
So you're looking for opportunity. I mean, you want to be heard. You want to not just be put in a corner and given remedial tasks. Like, I hear you. I mean, that was me when I was young, and I think my fear was, okay, I'm going to go work for this company, and I'm going to, you know, because I had experienced an internship that was like, it was good experience, but I was like, I do not want to do this the rest of my life. I do not want to sit in a cube and do this one little thing and pretty much have like not a lot of creative juice flowing. And that was big for me. So again, going back to earlier conversation, I think a big value of taking an internship when you're young is learning what you definitely don't want to spend your time doing. So my piece of advice, again, for young entrepreneurs is like, just take as many experiences as you can so you can figure out what you do and don't want to do. So what advice would you give other young professionals as they start their career?
I think that the biggest advice I would give young professionals is being willing to say yes, like I said, or advice to give leaders for young professionals, I should say, is being willing to teach them, and I think give honest feedback right away instead of letting things dwell for a while. And if they're not happy with how you're performing, I think they should be able to speak up right away and just kind of give you that feedback right away. So, yeah.
And I think, you know, finding your coach at your employer, you know, for young professionals, who can you go to find encouragement and find new tools and new ways to go about things, because it is scary. Maybe you're the youngest on the team and you feel like you don't have anybody who will listen to you, you know, finding that in a company and being coachable as well.
Yep. So find a mentor. I agree. It's really big. Find someone that can coach you and help you and be willing to listen to them. And I think that'll help you go a long way very quickly when you're getting started. So what mindset do you think young people need to have to be successful? Like, what are some of the characteristics they need to have?
For me, I would say be willing to say yes. Be willing to jump in head first and connect with people in ways that maybe you didn't know would happen, like meeting you when I was working part-time. I did not go into my shift thinking, I'm going to land a sales internship for this summer.
Probably not. No,
when I clock in at 5. Yep. You know, being willing to have those conversations and share about yourself. And the only way that worked out was, you know, I did follow up with you. I did engage with you, and I did say yes.
Yeah, that was the big thing. You had to make a big decision. You were going to make a huge pivot in what you were going to do, and you did it, and you said yes, and that's pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. Brooklyn?
I would say being curious and just continuing to be willing to learn. I think that a lot of people at our age, after they graduate college, they think that the learning period has stopped and they're done learning, they're done putting in the time that they did in college to learn new things. And I think that's one of the worst things that we can do at our age. I think that I've learned more in my time at Onsharp, just being able to experiment and working with real tools and real people. And I think that having that mindset to continue learning is one of the most valuable things you can do at our age.
All right, so big last question. If you could leave listeners with one thought, what would that thought be?
If I could leave listeners with one thought, I would say that to leaders, you were a young professional once too. So being able to commit to being a mentor for somebody, find a mentee where you can maybe you see yourself in them a little bit and want to encourage them. Because I think it's good. I think it's good for mentors as well.
Agree. Totally agree.
Sure.
Brooklyn?
100% agree. I think that she said that so great that I think that just really understanding where those young professionals are coming from, and like you said, to know that they were once in their shoes too. So just take a chance on that young professional, and you never know where it could go.
Yep. Well, thank you both for being on the show. This was a great conversation. To all of you business leaders out there, the next generation of leaders is already here, as you can see. The question is, will you do the right things to attract them? And will you give them an environment in which they can thrive? Thanks for tuning into the Business Blueprint. We will see you next time.